A good framework to think about how roles are transforming for the future is to realize that most titles will remain. What will change is what people do within those titles. And if there are 6 things people do in a job title, the things that are repetitive in nature will get replaced with AI. And the things that people would have wanted to do in the past that are strategic in nature, but they did not have bandwidth to do it, that will become the whole job.
Work is changing, quickly, irreversibly, and often invisibly. I'm Chris Fanchi, and this show is about understanding where it's headed and how we stay human in the process.
Hello and welcome to Human Work After AI, the show where we explore the future of work, technology, and what it means to stay human in the age of AI. We're speaking with founders, technologists, and thinkers who are navigating the shift toward an AI-powered economy. Today's guest is Chandan Maruti, founder and CEO of Twig.so, an AI-powered platform that acts as a coworker for your customer support agents. Chandan brings a rare blend of engineering leadership and real-world enterprise experience, having built data platforms at H2O.ai, led engineering at Lambda School, and even founded an e-commerce marketplace prior to launching Twig. Now he's on a mission to help support teams scale productivity using AI agents without sacrificing quality or empathy. Chandan, welcome to the show.
Chris, thanks for having me here. Excited to share what we are seeing out there in the market with companies adopting AI right now.
Fantastic. So I always like to start with a little bit about your background, your origin, so to speak. So what first got you into technology, and what was your path to getting to founding Twig?
Sure. I'll go all the way back. My dad used to work at a company called Bosch. Bosch makes automobile parts and accessories. And my first internship was at Bosch. When I would go in there to the factory every morning, I would look at these huge machines and realize there was no scenario where I could build a company like that because just the capital requirement was so high. When computers and software came about, um, realized you could have a laptop in your bedroom and build the next big thing, and that excited me, and that led me to software. And every morning when I wake up, I think about what can I do today that could make a difference in the worlds of people that we interact with every day.
So it sounds like you kind of always had that entrepreneurial bug, that goal to build your own business, run your own thing. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So how did you first get into software then, once you entered the workforce, and how did your career end up founding Twig?
So once I realized software was my path to being able to build something on my own, I tried to navigate my education down that path. My engineering was in mechanical and manufacturing engineering, which was very clearly not what would allow me to build my own business. So then I did a diploma and then a master's in computer science. And both those two things, the master's was a more formal multi-year education, and the diploma was, although shorter in duration, it was more relevant because the syllabus was something that companies were looking for right now. In fact, when I went through my interviews at campus, the hiring manager asked me, where are they teaching you the stuff? Because the things I knew was not being taught in school at the time. And so you know, one of the companies I worked at was Lambda School, and the reason I joined them later in my career was it was very relevant. If you think about education today, there's a huge gap between what kids learn in school and what is relevant in the job market right now. And it takes anywhere between 5 to 10 years for that transition to show up in school, right? Whereas, vocational training or a training that is designed for you to get a job right now is more relevant. It is anywhere between 6 to 12 months away from what the job market is looking for. So I think more people should do education that is relevant to get a job right now. And also, I think schools should have at least a third of the education they impart focused on what is relevant in the job market at at the moment. Most university education focuses on fundamental skills, and that's great. But if you are out of an university and you can't get a job, that would be pretty unfortunate. I believe a university should spend at least a third of their time educating students on what would let them get the job within 3 months of graduating.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And especially when you look at the current technology environment and the impact that AI is having on all jobs, taking 4 years to learn any skill, you just feels like you're going to be falling further and further behind. So let's talk a little bit more about Twig. What exactly does it do? What was the pain point that you identified that made you decide to start the business?
Yeah. So most of my career has been around being an engineer, building products, and leading product and engineering teams. In a strange turn of events, though, when I was working at a company called Zyme in Redwood Shores, California, the product that I was running at the company was stable. It was making a third of the company's revenue. And once the product was stable, the management looked at me and said, "Hey, you're here in the Bay Area, and your customers, about 20 of them on the West Coast, don't have anybody helping them. So why don't you run customer success for tomorrow?" And that's what happens when you're, working with senior leadership. They take decisions rapidly, and you have to adopt as well. So the next day I wake up and I'm running customer success for about 20 customers on the West Coast. And my job goes from looking at product and roadmaps and customer requirements to waking up and looking at renewals and how to sense if customers are happy with the product, whether they're getting the value for the money they paid for. So it's a very different skill set. It took me a few months to even understand what was expected of the role and then to define my own framework for it. But as a result of that, I got to work with companies like GoPro and Plantronics and Sonos and HP and Dell. And I would visit these companies every day. I would be on the road. I love that part of the job, though. I could hop on the car and drive up and down the West Coast and meet customers. One thing I realized in the job, though, was the customer success role was very expensive. You would have somebody that was being paid 150 to $200,000 to manage customer relationships. That person could, at the most, maintain 20 relationships, and so it was a very expensive role to offer. And so companies would not offer that role unless the customer was billing at least $25,000 a year. This had two problems. One, customers who are not billing that much were not getting the support, and second, the customers who were billing that much were getting the support, but it was 1/20th of a CSM's time. And even that was not enough. I remember walking to conversations where I would talk to the leader of of our customer and realize there was a problem, and then coming back and thinking, wait a minute, if the leader of that company got to know about this problem, it probably got escalated 2 weeks ago to the leader, and then 2 weeks ago to a manager, and then 2 weeks before that, the problem actually happened. So this was happening for 6 weeks. I had no idea it had happened. And so that whole model of customer success was just broken because of how inefficient that whole process was. Having worked at a company like H2O, where we built AI and auto ML platforms, I used to think about how we could bring technology to this problem. If you think about the role of a customer success manager, you think of them as the skin of the company. They sense problem first, but they are not able to be efficient because they have such limited bandwidth. Now, if you bring the whole idea of AI with unlimited bandwidth to this problem, can you sense problems sooner? If you had 1,000 customer success managers, what would they do? They would listen to every customer. They would observe every interaction. They would sense and escalate problems before customers realize them. What if AI could do that? And that is the problem statement we started Twig with. What if you could use AI to create 1,000 customer success managers that could be available to every user of a SaaS product? We have stuck with that problem statement since we started, and we've been working with customers which are on the larger side, enterprise customers with a few thousand users, and on the smaller side, mid-market companies with a few hundred users in both employees and customers. But that's the problem you're stuck with. How can you use technology to solve a problem that was broken to start with?
So how long have you been at this with Twig?
About 2 years now. We started in 2023. We launched a product. It was very unexpected. We launched with this idea. I built a terminal based demo. A friend of mine who's a VP of sales said, "Hey, I can't show this to anybody. Can you put this on a website so I can pull it up in a sales cycle?" I said, "Okay, sure." I did that. And that night, when I had published it on the website, I was like, "Wait, let me get some critical feedback." And Hacker News happens to be both Reddit and Hacker News happen to be pretty critical users. They tell you if they don't like something. And so I put it on Hacker News. To my surprise, it was on the front page. We got about 260 people that signed up for the trial, and then we had a very solid initial group of users who we were able to speak with. That led to our first few contracts. Since then, we have been continuing to. Um, the one thing I would say, what we learned was when we started off, did not have a good idea of who our customer was, and as we launched and as we spoke with a lot of customers, we saw that the B2B, a fintech SaaS customer, a vertical SaaS fintech customer had a good understanding of the problem space. And we had a good understanding of the customer as well, having served these kinds of companies through our lives. And so that was a good match for us. We understood the technology, we understood the problem space, and we were able to speak in a way that our customers could understand what we were saying, and we could understand what our customers were saying, which is easier said than done in most cases.
You've mentioned in our previous conversation multi-year contracts and deep customer relationships. So what makes retention so strong for your company?
The answer is it's the most non-sexy part of the job, which is it is about listening to customers, showing up every day, and making changes in your product that customers are. Most customers are, they understand. They know things can't be done overnight. But if they know that you are making the necessary tweaks at the frequency that is acceptable, and then you're going deeper and deeper in solving the problem, then that's where you realize customers will stick with you. I'll give you an example. I used to be terrified going into these weekly and bi-weekly customer review meetings because I had no idea what happened in the last 2 weeks. And talk about customer success. This is exactly a customer success problem. Although we are building a product that helps success, our own product has this problem, right? Which is how are we doing? I had no idea how we were doing. The bigger problem than me not knowing how we were doing is that my customer would not know how we were doing. And so the whole sense of value was not well established. And I was feeling very anxious with these relationships. So then we built a very robust evaluation framework. And what the framework did was any interaction that our customers had with our product, we would evaluate them on 7 dimensions, which evaluated whether the customer's question was answered accurately, whether there was any hallucination, if there was any feedback from the end user, was that to the meaning of the question or was it a grammatical change? That gave us a very quantifiable response. So today, when I walk into a customer meeting, the customer knows exactly how we did, even if it is not exactly where they expected us to be. If it's a few points less, the customer's totally fine with it because they have a good understanding of where we stand. We have a good understanding where we stand, and that delta, we have a plan to bridge the delta. And so long-term relationships are formed not by being right all the time, but by having clarity in terms of what's working and what's broken and how we're going to fix the delta. The problem with AI is there's a huge amount of overselling and under delivering that's happening. That leads to it starts with disillusionment where the customer thought they would achieve some outcome they did not achieve that outcome, results in a loss of interest as a phase two of the problem, and then eventually they don't renew the contract because they can't justify to anybody why they're doing this. To solve this, we have really been doubling down on the whole value component, which is how valuable our AI is in answering questions. And so today we are able to show that if your users interacted 1,000 times in the last 2 weeks with Twig, how many of those times they got an accurate answer? How many of those times we were unable to answer? And as long as that number is the high 90s, our customers realize that's as good as humans and often better than humans. And that helps us go in the right direction. So just going down that rabbit hole of how do we get this right and doing things that most people don't even realize, but moving that needle that matters to the customer, I think that is really what keeps us honest in delivering the solution.
So, what are you seeing in terms of the impact or the adoption of AI within customer success and customer relationships? Is it something that companies are anxious to do? Do they feel like they rather have that human interaction, or they really still want that human engagement in addition to having AI support that can be available 24/7? What is the feeling that you're seeing in that area?
Yeah, I think customer success managers, support teams will always be there. They will not go away. But what they will do will start changing, right? A lot of the mundane work that they do will get replaced with AI, and their role will get transformed to do the things that humans are really good at doing. And so, what AI is good at doing is, let's say there's a customer question. AI is good at looking at millions of documents and pulling out the right answer and giving the answer, right? What humans are good at doing is looking for a pattern amongst all those questions and saying, hey, what's going on? We see that the green widgets module has been giving most issues. Let's talk about how to not just fix issues, but prevent issues from happening in the first place. Or we see this customer was very engaged in the last 6 months and we see the engagement has reduced. What's the problem? Let's find the right person in the company and talk to them. If you take away the mundane question answering job from the customer success manager, then now they have new bandwidth. And that bandwidth they can use in doing these strategic things, which are which are hard for AI to do. In short, I think the every role that we are aware of today is going to transform. And in the customer support and success role, it's going to transform from doing transactional work to doing strategic work. And the same goes with engineers as well. Half my time I'm writing code, and in the past I used to write complex code, connectors, algorithms, and now a lot of that work has transformed into thinking about what the product should do, and defining the framework and working with AI to write code that is very efficient. So all of our roles are transforming in ways we did not expect. A good framework, I'm sorry, this is a small deviation, but I think it's relevant. Framework to think about how roles are transforming for the future is to realize that most titles will remain. What will change is what people do within those titles. And if there are 10 things, or let's say 6 things people do in a job title, the things that are repetitive in nature will get replaced with AI, and the things that people would have wanted to do in the past that are strategic in nature, but they do not have bandwidth to do it, that will become the whole job. And that's happening with coding, that's happening with support, that's happening with success. But that's a good framework to think about of how jobs will transform.
Are you seeing as the AI replaces or takes over some of these mundane tasks and answers the mundane questions that customers are feeling more inclined to share some of the bigger issues with the customer success team so that they no longer have to wait to get the answers to the simple questions, right? But when they have those interactions with the actual humans, the human members of the team, that you're able to get a little bit deeper into the issues and the problems.
I would say yes and no. The answer is yes. Now the new bandwidth that's available, the customer support and success teams have the bandwidth to do the job. However, at present, I would say no, because although they have new bandwidth, they may not have the ability to go find the information that is hidden in all this data. And so the next step for AI is to identify signals for customer for these roles that would help them take these preventive actions. And that combination of data plus signals will help humans take actions, because even when the repetitive tasks are taken away, there's still a lot of data that somebody has to look at, and that's not a non-trivial task. And so the next thing AI can do is look at all that data that is in front of you and identify signals for you to act on. Imagine coming into work and you have a plan made for you by AI that says, hey, let's talk to Sonos. I see they haven't used the product in 6 days. Let's talk to Plantronics. They haven't, they have been getting errors in this green module. Imagine this is like a godsend for somebody in the success role, because if you come in the morning and you have a plan prepared by AI and you're just focusing on that human relationship, then it allows you to do your job 3 to 4 times more productively. And that's what I mean by identifying signals and making it easy for people to act.
So something you've mentioned before is this concept of distributable expertise. Can you explain what that is and talk a little bit more about it?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. In the past, when we have an idea within whatever work we do, right? So most experts are an expert. They have some kind of skill and some kind of domain knowledge, right? And they bring those two things to make their work very productive. In the past, when we had to share something that we knew, we would write a blog post about it. We may even put some charts and diagrams there, and somebody would look at that and replicate that in their own world. With open source software, engineers were able to write code that would solve a package like a npm package or a open source Git repo that people could copy. But the audience for that was still very technical. You had to be a developer to use those kinds of things. Today, with tools like N8N and Zapier and others, people are able to write automations. And with the AI, they're able to use the knowledge to build pretty complex automations. So, this combination of being able to bring your knowledge to write solutions and then distribute them as a package, I've seen happening more and more. The most recent examples of what I've seen happen is marketeers who are really good at sharing what they do have been putting together little innate in scripts that do things like, let's say, find people on LinkedIn or automate a follow-up schedule or do something like that that's very unique to their space. And they've been sharing these automations. Half their intent is that people use the automations, and the other half is people realize that these you are the expert in that space and reach out to you. But I think this is something different than what we've seen before. Knowledge has been shared historically as text. Now knowledge is being shared, and then it was shared as code. Now knowledge is being shared as something that can be used. And the problem with sharing knowledge as code is you had to have an engineer to use it. But when knowledge is being shared as a runnable piece of software, it can be used by people who are not engineers. I think that's a huge leap in human knowledge sharing, and I think it's going to create some pretty amazing, um, acceleration of human abilities. Somebody in New York who is working on a marketing problem sees something posted by somebody from Palo Alto, pulls that package, runs it, gets the benefit, makes a tweak, republishes it, and then somebody else in Washington uses it. I think this is pretty amazing if you can think about how this will accelerate what work people do.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you've talked about agentic tools a little bit. Do you see a future where people essentially design their own mini AIs as extensions of their workflow?
Yes, if you think about replicating themselves, I think that's hard. But if you think about replicating very specific things that people do, I think that's easy. Most good solutions solve very well defined problems. So if the problem is poorly defined, then it's very hard to build a good solution because the scope is creeping all the time. So if the scope is very narrowly defined, then the solution can be amazing within that scope. And hence, any such agentic solution has to be defined within very clear scopes. So the answer is yes. People can automate very specific things they do into agentic tools that they can then be used by others. The way I think about agentic solutions is historically humans have used software to accomplish tasks. And when you look at a job posting on Indeed or Monster, you'd see, let's say, support, right? You'd see people hiring a support person, and there are 6 or 7 things that the support person is expected to do. Today, pre-agentic, people use tools like Zendesk. In that role, a support person uses Zendesk to maintain a list of tickets they're working on. They use non-agentic AI Q&A to respond to customers based on the questions that they receive. In an agentic solution, the way it will transform is it'll not be humans using AI, but it'll be AI doing the job and humans overseeing what the AI is doing. So when a question is received, the agentic solution is able to get the question. It's able to triage that question. It's able to respond to that question, and it's able to reach out to a human if it's unable to take an action. So the humans, the benefit would be instead of spending 10 to 15 minutes sequentially on a list of questions, they would let AI do the thing. And so the AI would be able to, in parallel, handle 100 questions and identify 10 questions that it couldn't handle. And the human would then look at those 10 questions and help address them in a sequential way. So the throughput will be higher. It'll still have human oversight, but the job definition just changed. You went from answering every single question to only answering questions that an AI was not able to handle. So, two things need to happen. The AI needs to be smart enough to be able to know when it is able to do the job and when it is unable to do the job. And then humans, their roles are going to be different. And let's say in a team of 10 people, you had 3 people who were really good at answering the complex questions, and the rest were answering the most simpler questions. The rest of the people who were answering simpler questions, their role may get affected. But the people who were handling the more tough questions, they will become even more valuable because you have now a smaller team, and there's more money to go around. And so these people who had to answer these tough questions are focusing only on those tough questions, working with an AI to do the rest of the job. So we will see a lot of transformation happen. It's unclear what the timeline is. It's unclear whether this is going to be a few months or several years into the future. A good example was to look at e-commerce. When e-commerce first came about, we all knew that this was the future. You could see it. But it took about 25 years. Amazon first launched to us being using Amazon as the the, the most common way we buy things. Um, and a lot of the things that happened were not even in the whole buying experience. If you think about the whole Amazon buying experience, it's probably the same since the last 20 years. But what changed underneath is how products were procured and stored in the warehouse, how things were picked and placed by robots into packages that could be delivered, how routing was done, right? Things that most people don't even see. Those are the places where the real transformation happened, and I think that will happen with agents as well. Um, all the demos that we see today that we think are amazing will eventually be true, but in order for them to be true, a lot of work will happen behind the scenes that people wouldn't realize.
So how do you respond to the concern that's out there that AI is essentially wiping out entry level tasks, but that's basically entry level jobs in a lot of ways? And so some of those people that you talked about that are more experienced and knowledgeable, well, you're kind of pulling out the opportunity for people to get to that level, and eventually you're going to lose that knowledge base as it ages out of the organization. So what do you think should be the approach to dealing with this potential issue?
That's a great question. The answer is not extremely clear simply because this is evolving so quickly, and the definition of the problem is itself changing every day. My recommendation to somebody who is at an entry level role within these organizations is to start using AI in their work as heavily as they can. Um, think of uh, in I think in 1975 or 1915, Black and Decker launched a popular power tool, which was a drill. And before that, people were using manual drills, right? So when you had this power tool, you could be the person using the power tool and being more efficient than others, or you could be the person that resists these power tools. And eventually, if you look at it, as much as you dislike the power tool, it was very clear that the writing was on the wall that eventually everybody would have to use a power tool, right? So if eventually everybody will have to use AI, my recommendation for young folks getting into the job role is to adopt AI as much as you can. What will happen as a result is when that transformation happens, and transformation is not going to be linear, it's not going to be fast. We have seen that with e-commerce, right? There were lots of missteps. Companies like Webvan and others thought e-commerce grocery shopping would happen 20 years ago. No, it took 20 years, and several startups later where companies were able to do things like DoorDash and personal shoppers, right? The technology was the same, but it took about 20 years for it to be adopted. The same thing will happen with AI in the work as well. It's going to take a lot of iterations before people get this right. And if you're using AI in your work, you're going to be the person who's going to drive the adoption rather than being affected by it. At all our customer implementations, our most powerful users, as we call it, the power users, are entry level folks who have young, who are excited, who are using AI every day, and they're able to transform their own roles themselves. And so, folks who are able to use it, they're able to see how the tool can be put to use, and they can redefine the role that, hey, last year we were answering every question. This year, let's monitor the AI and only handle the questions that are that the AI can't do. If you are using it every day, then you can make such decisions. The longer you are away from it, the harder it'll be to see what those boundaries look like and what that new role will look like. So I'm sorry I don't have a great answer because the problem definition is changing every day, and it's hard to define a prescriptive answer to this problem.
So as AI continues to scale inside of customer success, customer experience teams, what human traits do you believe are going to become much more valuable?
That's a great question. As an engineer, we have always been forced to learn new things. When I was doing my formal education, I was learning things like COBOL and Fortran. Before I hit the work space, I was doing things like ASP.NET. Within the first 2 years, we transitioned from that to things like Java and then Node.js and things like that. So who's been an engineer has been forced to relearn every 2 years. That was the definition of the role. The job paid well, but every 2 years you were doing something different than you did before. So we have been forced to be in this mindset where knowledge is ever changing, and learning new things and putting them to use has become the definition of the role. It's not even like a nice to have. That is the role, learning new things and putting them to use. And as a result, you're always I would say an apprentice and always a newcomer to this space. Most roles other than software engineering have not had this problem. If you're an electrician, you're working on codes that were defined 50 years ago. If you were a plumber, the same thing, right? Once you learn in school, you don't really have to learn again because the codes don't change, methods don't change. I think that is the fundamental difference. Software engineers have been forced to get into a mindset where you're always learning and putting new things to use. Now that is going to come to every other role. You will be forced to learn new things and put them to use. And making that making that your mindset is going to be important. How do you do that? That's a great question. I think the answer would be to just force yourself to learn these things, to adopt technology, even when sometimes it may not make total sense, but you're doing it because you're getting to be ahead of it rather than being affected by it. And the same thing with engineers, right? A lot of times we try new things, it doesn't work. We go back to our old base. But the fact that we tried it, we now know where to use this new thing and where not to use this new thing, right? So this whole mindset of constantly experimenting with new things and adopting them is going to be critical to the new mental framework of work.
From a business perspective or a management perspective, rather than looking at AI creating all this free time that you can give more work to the employees. Maybe it's an opportunity for them to spend more time learning while the AI does the mundane, and that can improve the quality of the organization by letting everybody level up their understanding of the customer needs and whatever their job role is.
Totally. With every customer that we serve, two things are happening at the same time. Their core business teams, let's say we're working with a large digital marketing company. We're working with a warehouse software management company. There's a part of the organization that's looking at how they can adopt AI in transforming those core offerings that they have. And there's another part of their organization that's working with us to see how things can be made more efficient with AI and more productive with AI. So everybody's working on AI, but they're trying to solve different problems. One is looking at the future, the other one is looking at efficiency and optimization.
So I'll let you out of here on this. If you could design the perfect AI human hybrid support team, what would that look like, say, in the next 2 to 4 years?
Yeah, from what we can see right now, and this definition changes every day, but what we can see right now, a perfect AI and human hybrid team would be able to immediately respond to customer questions with zero delay. Most customers don't like to wait. And so if they can send a question and get an answer right away, that is customer delight. You cannot beat that. So if the AI system can either answer or triage and escalate or take that next step as the first action, I think that would be an amazing customer experience, which is you send a question, you get either an answer or the AI says, hey, I couldn't answer you in an automated way. I've escalated it. We'll have somebody get back to you. And then a few months from there, that whole definition of what the AI can do versus what it cannot do will keep transforming, and fewer questions will not be handled by AI. And the team that's at the company has more bandwidth now to handle those hard questions, which earlier was getting sort of mixed in with everything else. And so even the hard questions are going to get answered quicker because the team has more bandwidth now. And the easier questions are going to be answered instantly, resulting in delight.
So, Chandan, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. For those who want to learn more about Twig and follow your work, where should they go?
So our website is www.twig.so, like here. Uh, the way to think about why to work with Twig is we focus on outcome. So when we work with customers, we define the baseline, we define what an expected outcome is, and we work with our customers to get them to that goal. We don't give you a piece of software and say, go figure it out, because most support and success teams are non-technical and they need that help to become successful. So Twig focuses on outcomes. And if that's what's important for you, we'd love to hear from you.
But those of you listening, if you enjoyed this, please be sure to leave us a review, share it with your friends, subscribe so that you can always catch the next episode. And as always, thank you so much for joining us, and stay human.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Human Work After AI. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.